Not sure of where to start when it comes to buying your first reptile? By the end of this video, you will have my top 5 most important tips to give new reptile owners. If you're looking for interesting and engaging conversation about reptiles and the reptile trade that goes beyond ball pythons and ball python morphs, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss weekly content. If you are new to the channel, my name is Dylan. Welcome to Animals at Home. As I said, today we are breaking down my top 5 most important tips when it comes to purchasing your first reptile. Just so you understand where this list came from, I've had the pleasure of talking to 50 plus people on my podcast. These are people who are highly intelligent and highly respected in the reptile community. After speaking with them, these are the 5 common themes that tends to come up out of those conversations. These are 5 good foundational tips that will allow you to have success in the reptile hobby. Tip number 1, make sure you plan for the adult size of the animal you are purchasing. A very, very common mistake that novice reptile keepers make is they assume that they're gonna buy a small animal, and as the animal grows, they will be able to grow with it in terms of their budget and in terms of the space that they have. That is just simply not the case, and it's not the way you wanna go into buying your first animal. You wanna already have the space and the money set aside for when the animal does need its full-sized enclosure. Tip number 2. Now this is sort of an unfortunate one. A lot of times keeping reptiles is sort of painted as an inexpensive hobby to get into, and it's just really not the case. You don't want to be jumping into reptiles because you think that they're inexpensive. Purchasing a single animal can be really inexpensive. Quite often, purchasing the animal is the most inexpensive piece of the reptile trade. But there's a lot of other things that come in as part of that package when you purchase an animal: enclosure, proper lighting, proper heat, substrates, food. The bills continue to add up, and you really need to make sure that you can afford the entire package and not just the animal. So many times people buy just the animal and then they put it in this very simple setup because it's all they can afford. Now, I'm not saying you need to run out and create a large bioactive giant vivarium, but you do want to have an idea of a budget in mind that is well beyond the basic paper towel and water dish for whatever animal you're keeping. You want to start with some level of natural enrichment, whether it's some substrate, some climbing, some lighting. You want to have at least a few of those aspects in, with the goal of growing that care level as you financially are able to do so. I don't mind somebody starting with a slightly more inexpensive setup as long as they have some natural things or some enrichment involved, as long as the goal is there to grow. Of course, I started like that. I started with smaller setups, simpler setups, and as I've been able to afford it, I've been able to grow and add more enrichment into my animals' lives. I only have 6 animals, which is a fairly modest collection, but I already know that I have more than I can afford because I can't care for them in the way that I want to, because I accumulated more animals because I was just looking at the price tag of the animal and not the whole package. So I'm hoping I can pass some of that information onto you and help you make a better choice. The exciting thing about spending a lot on your animal in terms of its setup and its enclosure is your animal will give you everything back and more so. Watching your animal behave naturally is so exciting, and they will not behave or display natural behaviors if you don't provide the level of enrichment for them to do so. Your animal will not climb if there's no place for it to climb. It won't swim if there's no place for it to swim. It won't dig, so on and so on and so on. And I promise you, the most rewarding thing of owning reptiles is getting to watch them behave naturally. The more you can get towards that, the better. Again, you don't have to start with a giant bioactive crazy enclosure. I actually don't recommend that if it's your first reptile, but I do recommend having that vision in place. How am I going to get from point A to point B? Point B being much larger, more enriching environment for the animal you buy. Tip number 3. I want you to become as obsessed with the natural environment of the animal you want as you are with the animal itself. It is super important that those two things are coupled together. If you really want a bearded dragon, but when you look up natural habitats of bearded dragons, you don't want that as a slice of nature in your room, you don't really like the look of that arid sort of style of enclosure, you think that's not as nice as something like a rainforest, then you really should start looking towards more tropical species, or vice versa. Some people love creating arid setups, some people love creating tropical setups. A lot of keepers in the industry like to keep both because as they advance, they want to try different sides, different environments to replicate. But you really want to make sure that the picture, which is the enclosure itself, is something you want to look at every single day. Super important. Tip number 4, and this is a big one, and it's one that if you don't follow can get you into some dangerous waters, and a lot of people fall into this trap, including myself a little bit. Beware that the want to want reptiles is a stronger force than the want to have reptiles. What the heck does that mean? Well, you'll find that once you buy one reptile, you're gonna really, really want another reptile, and they can easily start to accumulate, and you're just constantly gonna be shopping and looking at different classifieds or expos because you're always wanting more animals, okay? But that satisfaction of purchasing the animal only lasts a short time, and eventually you're gonna need another animal to get that nice little spike, nice little dopamine spike where you get excited with a new animal, and it becomes a vicious cycle of constantly needing a new animal every couple of months to fulfill that excitement need. Now, that's a really dangerous spot to go because eventually it means you're gonna have way more animals than you can afford and care for responsibly, and the animals are gonna suffer. So the way to actually defeat this popular mindset that reptile keepers run through is, and I love this quote, I got it from episode number 24 of my podcast with John Courtney Smith. He said, you wanna direct that excitement, that eagerness to collect new animals into collecting more information about the animals you already have.
But as part of our developmental or evolutionary, whatever word you want to use, history, we've had to become collectors, whether that's food or ornamentation or firewood or anything. We are collectors, and we can't override that. You know, people collect stamps, they collect coins, they collect dogs, they collect novels, but we all collect something. If you have an interest in natural history and you are able to keep live animals, it only makes sense that you want to collect. But actually channeling that desire to collect large amount of animals into actually collecting knowledge of how to keep animals properly and then seeing the animals do it is far more fulfilling than scooting around 25 different vivs trying to feed and water when you get back knackered at the end of the day. Then you know we just haven't got time for that in our lives anymore. So it's better, you know, if you can devote 25, 30 minutes a day into one or two or three good-sized, properly functioning enclosures, it'll be far more fulfilling.
Oh yeah, and that's exactly right. I think that I really love what you just said there, collecting information. And you'll find that it's almost like a little hack in your brain. You'll be looking for new animals and wanting new things and just constantly want. You can actually divert that energy to wanting to learn more about the species you've kept. How can I create this environment so it's more natural to where this animal specifically comes from? And how can I get this animal to start behaving in more of a natural way? And you'll constantly be pushing all of that energy into improving the care of the animals you already have, and you'll be way more rewarded by it because your animals will start behaving in more natural ways, and that's something that you can watch every single day. It's not a really quick spike of dopamine from buying a new animal that fades away. Every day I get to wake up, come into this room, and watch my day gecko behave exactly as a day gecko would in Madagascar because I spent the time learning how to do that, and that's how you get the satisfaction from the hobby, not from constantly buying new animals. And it's something that not a lot of people talk about, but it's definitely a danger. Again, it sort of relates to number 2 because a lot of people assume the hobby is very inexpensive and they can just create a bunch of drawers of different animals. It's not the case. You will end up, A, you will suffer financially from that, and B, the animals will suffer from just a welfare standpoint. And my last tip number 5, sort of relates to the tip number 4. Go listen to episode number 24 of the Animals at Home podcast where I talk with John Courtney Smith. John is a brilliant person, and that episode more than any other has really made paradigm shifts in people's care. I get so many messages all the time from people who are really hardcore industrial style ball python rack type people who listen to that podcast and really change the way they think of their animal care, and it pushed them into more of an enriching mode, wanting to enrich the animals that they have more rather than collecting more animals and breeding ball python more, so whatever it is. Go listen to that episode. If you start your reptile journey with that episode, you will be off onto a great footing. If you are a beginner and you're just getting into reptile keeping, please let me know if you have any other questions or any other things that have popped up in your brain. I'm sure I've missed some things. If you are already an advanced keeper or someone that's been keeping reptiles for a while, do you think I missed something? Are there some things on this list that I should have put on there that I haven't? Let's have a little discussion going on in the comments so we can start collecting a really good amount of solid foundational information for newcomers to the hobby. So again, make sure you go listen to that podcast episode number 24. Link is in the description. You can go listen to it on your way to work, on your way to school, on the bus, when you're cleaning your reptile enclosures, listen to that. Even if you're not a brand new reptile keeper, this is a podcast that will change the way you think of keeping reptiles. If you'd like to be part of the Animals at Home community, give me a follow on Instagram at animalsathomeca. I answer all my DMs on there, so you can come say hi, and make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the weekly content, either podcasts or videos like this. I will see you guys next time.